The golden child got me kicked out, but karma showed them who's boss. It's funny how quickly things can fall apart, how a single moment can change everything you thought you knew about yourself. For me, it was that night, the night everything crashed down. My family, the people I had spent my whole life trying to make proud, turned on me just like that. All because of one thing, Claire. I'm 18, fresh out of high school, and ready to start the next chapter of my life. College was my ticket to freedom, to escaping the suffocating grasp of my family. But what I didn't expect was that the very thing I was most excited about would be the reason they kicked me out. It wasn't just the fact that I was going to school, it was the way I had to go about paying for it. I had worked my butt off to get into a reputable college in the UK, studying history, a subject I was passionate about. My parents should have been proud, but they weren't. Not because they didn't believe in my potential, but because it wasn't the same as what Claire had done. Claire, my older sister, was always the golden child, the perfect one, the one who could do no wrong. Claire was 4 years older than me, and from the time we were kids, she was always the favorite. Always. If she brought home an A, it was a celebration, balloons, cake, the whole shebang. If I brought home an A, a simple nod and a good job. But that was it. Claire could do no wrong, while I was left to try harder just to be seen. She was the one who went to a top-tier business school, a path paved with my parents' money and constant praise. Meanwhile, I was just try-so when it came time for me to go to college. I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time I would get a little bit of support. I wasn't asking for much, just a little help with the tuition. I wasn't asking them to pay the whole thing. All I needed was a co-signature on a loan. But when I brought it up, my parents hit me with the coldest response possible. We can't afford it. We've already paid for Claire's tuition, and now we have to think about our future. It wasn't just the financial rejection that stung. It was the complete lack of consideration. My parents had no problem splurging on Claire. But when it came to me, it was suddenly a different story. They couldn't even lend me a hand to avoid drowning in debt. I was furious, but I wasn't going to give up. If they wouldn't help, then I would find another way. I reached out to my Aunt Denise, my dad's older sister. Now, Aunt Denise was a whole different story. She was nothing like my parents. Successful, kind, and generous. She was a neurosurgeon who had always been there for me. Even if my parents didn't see it, they always acted polite around her, but I could feel the tension. My dad had this ridiculous grudge against her, jealousy, I guess. He could never handle the fact that she had a career, a life that outshone his own. But when I reached out to Aunt Denise, I didn't expect her to hesitate for even a second. "Of course, I'll help you," she said. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" I was relieved but also terrified. If my dad found out that I had asked his sister for help, he would lose it. But there was no other option. Aunt Denise agreed to help, and she promised to keep it a secret. Things were looking up. I had the tuition covered, and everything was set for me to leave for the UK. But then Claire found out. To this day, I don't know how she found out, but I didn't have long to wonder. One night, after hanging out with friends, I walked into the house, and everything was wrong. My room, my stuff, everything was packed up in boxes. My books, my clothes, even my bedding. Everything was gone. And there they were. My parents sitting in the living room, Claire standing smugly behind them like she'd just won some sort of twisted victory. My heart dropped. Couldn't breathe. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. But my dad didn't waste any time. He threw a stack of papers at me and demanded, "Explain this." I looked down at the papers, and that's when the world around me started to spin. There were emails, fake emails, and they were about me and Aunt Denise. Apparently, Claire had gone through my laptop and fabricated a lie. She had doctored emails between me and Aunt Denise, making it look like I was betraying the family, leaking private details about my parents' business plans in exchange for tuition money. It was all a lie, every word. But my parents didn't care. They didn't even listen. They believed her. They believed Claire because, of course, they did. She was the golden child. It didn't matter what I said. No one was willing to stand up for me. I was thrown out of my own house, kicked to the curb like some criminal. I begged them to reconsider, but my parents didn't care. They told me to leave. So, with nothing but a few boxes of my things and the clothes on my back, I walked out of the house. My parents had thrown me away, all because of a lie Claire had made up. I walked out of the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like I had been ripped apart from the inside out. Everything I knew, everything I had counted on, had just been shattered in a single moment. I had no idea what to do. Next, where was I supposed to go? What was I supposed to feel? Betrayal, anger, confusion. It was all there, washing over me in waves. And yet, a strange calm was settling in, too. I knew deep down that things could never go back to the way they were. Standing on the doorstep, with the cold night air biting at my skin, I felt more alone than I ever had in my life. My parents, the ones who were supposed to love and protect me, had just thrown me out. Over a lie. Complete fabrication, no less. And my sister? Claire, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She had orchestrated the entire thing. The cruelty, the manipulation, it all felt like it had been in the works for years. I had always been the one pushed aside, ignored, the one who could never live up to Claire's perfect image. But I never imagined it would go this far. I could hear my parents' voices in my head, their words accusing me of betrayal, of being ungrateful, of stabbing them in the back. Felt like a nightmare, one I couldn't wake up from. But then, just as quickly as it started, the chaos in my mind started to clear. I had to move on. I had to find a way to survive. And the only person who would have my back now was Aunt Denise. I didn't even know how I would get there. I had nothing. I had no car, no money. Just the few boxes of my things that my parents had so callously packed up for me. But somehow I found my way to Aunt Denise's house. When I rang the doorbell, I was terrified that she wouldn't answer, that maybe even she would turn me away. But the moment the door opened and I saw her face, I felt a sense of relief flood through me. Aunt Denise didn't ask questions. She didn't look at me with judgment. She just opened her arms and pulled me inside. "You're always welcome here," she said, her voice soft but filled with a strength I hadn't realized I needed. Her house was nothing like my parents'. It wasn't perfect or full of fake smiles. It was real and it was safe. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. Denise had no idea what had just happened, but she knew something was wrong. I collapsed on the couch, exhausted from the emotional turmoil, and she just sat beside me, rubbing my back gently, letting me cry without saying a word. I told her everything. How Claire had betrayed me, how my parents had thrown me out. And as I spoke, I felt this weight slowly lifting off my chest. Denise listened, but when I finished, she didn't say what I thought she would. She didn't give me the usual "everything will be fine" speech. Instead, she sighed, her voice heavy with understanding. "I've known for years," she said, her words cutting through the tension. "I didn't want to make things harder for you, but your dad has always been jealous of me. There's been a game between us, who can be more successful, who gets more attention. It's never been about you, though. It's been about him trying to feel better about himself." I froze. "What do you mean?" Denise looked at me, her expression a mixture of sadness and resignation. "Your father always resented me. He's never been able to handle the fact that I've done well in life, and he's never been able to let go of that jealousy. And that resentment has bled into how he's treated you. It's why he's always put Claire on a pedestal and ignored you. It's why everything has been so difficult." It was like a light bulb went off in my mind. All the years of feeling like I didn't matter, like I couldn't measure up, suddenly made sense. It wasn't me. It was him. It wasn't my fault. It was his jealousy. Denise's words were like a balm to my bruised soul, but they also made everything even more painful. All those years of feeling invisible, of trying to get my parents' attention, suddenly felt like I had been chasing something that was never meant to be mine. Over the next few days, Denise and I grew closer. She didn't pressure me to talk, but she always made sure I knew I wasn't alone. She helped me get everything sorted for school and made sure I had everything I needed before I left for the UK. It was a strange kind of peace, but it was the only peace I had. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents would come around, that they would realize what they had done and call me, apologize for what they had done. After all, they had to, right? They were my parents. But days turned into weeks, and not a single call came. Not from my dad, not from my mom, not even Claire. That silence? It was deafening, and it started to eat at me. Time moved strangely in Aunt Denise's house. At first, everything felt foreign. Waking up in a guest room that wasn't mine. The quiet of a home that didn't carry the weight of my family's expectations. But as the weeks passed, I began to find a rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next round of manipulations or guilt trips from my parents. I could breathe, really breathe, without wondering when Claire would decide to turn my life upside down again. Denise made sure I was focused on my future. I didn't have to worry about where my next meal would come from, or whether I'd have a roof over my head. She gave me the space I needed to heal and regain my sense of self. But as much as I wanted to forget about my past, something inside me kept waiting. I kept waiting for that phone call, that message, anything, but nothing came. It wasn't that I expected them to beg for forgiveness. I knew my parents well enough to know they wouldn't do that. It wasn't in their nature. They had always played their little games, building up Claire as the perfect child while I was left to fend for myself. But I never imagined they would go this long without any sort of acknowledgement, especially after kicking me out over a lie. Then one day I got a message. I was sitting in my apartment, scrolling through some notes for a paper I was working on. The day had been relatively normal, no signs of drama, just me and my studies. And then my phone buzzed. At first, I didn't think much of it. But when I saw the name flashing across the screen, my heart stopped. It was my mom. I stared at the screen, disbelief sinking in. After everything that had happened, why was she reaching out now? My mind raced with questions. What did she want? Why now, after all this time? Part of me wanted to ignore it, to just let it ring out like the other calls had, but I couldn't. I picked up the phone, my hand shaking slightly. "Hello," I said, my voice steady, but I could feel the tension in my chest. There was a long pause on the other end, like she was trying to find the right words. Then, in a voice that didn't quite sound like hers, she finally spoke. "Hi, it's your mother." I didn't answer at first. Part of me wanted to hang up, but I held on, waiting for her to explain why she was calling after everything that had happened. "We need to talk," she said hesitantly. Couldn't believe it. After nearly 2 years of silence, she was calling to talk? About what? I asked, my voice cold. "You kicked me out. You believed Claire's lies. You haven't even checked in on me. What could possibly be so important that you're reaching out now?" She hesitated again, the words stumbling out as if she was choosing them carefully. "Things have been hard. With the business, with everything. Your dad and I, we've been struggling. We need your help." My blood ran cold. This was, after all the hurt, all the years of neglect, now they needed me. Now, after everything they had put me through, they wanted me to come running back. The audacity of it all was staggering. "You want my help?" I repeated, incredulity dripping from every word. "After everything you did, after throwing me out, you think I'm just going to help you now?" My mom's voice wavered, and for the first time, I could hear the vulnerability in her tone. "We know we made mistakes," she admitted. "We were wrong, but we're family, and family sticks together, don't they?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Family? You kicked me out, Mom. You believed Claire over me. You didn't even bother to check if I was okay. And now, just because things aren't going your way, you think I'm supposed to come running to help you?" Her voice faltered. "We didn't mean for it to be like this. We've always tried to do what's best for you. We've been through a lot." I shook my head, anger building in my chest. "If you really thought what you were doing was best for me, you wouldn't have believed Claire's lies. You wouldn't have thrown me out like I was nothing. And now, after all of that, you want me to help you." For a long time, there was silence on the other end. I could almost hear her trying to make sense of what I was saying, trying to process that I wasn't going to be the person I used to be, the person they could manipulate, guilt trip, and control. "Please," she said softly. "We're your parents. We need you." I felt a wave of rage wash over me. "You want me to help you? You want me to just forget everything you did to me and come to your rescue? After everything? I don't owe you anything. You made your choices, and now you have to deal with the consequences." There was a pause, and then I heard her voice crack slightly. "But we're family." I laughed, a hollow sound. "Your family, huh? You stopped being family the moment you chose Claire over me. The moment you believed her over your own child. I'm done with this, Mom. I don't owe you a damn thing." Before she could respond, I hung up the phone. My heart was pounding in my chest, but there was a strange sense of relief, too. For the first time, I felt like I had control over my life. I wasn't living under Claire's shadow anymore. I wasn't the second choice or the scapegoat. I was free. I didn't look back. Couldn't. They had made their choice, and now they had to live with the consequences. The phone call with my mom felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders, but it also left a lingering taste of bitterness. There was no sense of closure, just emptiness. For all the years I had tried to gain their approval, it had all been for nothing. The final straw had been pulled, and there was no going back. Yet even as I moved forward, the thought of my parents, my sister, and what they had done to me kept creeping into my mind. It was impossible to fully let go when they had left such deep scars. A few weeks passed in relative peace. I was settling into my life in the UK, the distance giving me the clarity I needed. I was focused on my studies, making new friends, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Aunt Denise had been a godsend. She never once made me feel like a burden, never once treated me like I was broken. I was finally finding myself again. But no matter how much I tried to move on, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something else would happen. They would come back. They had to, didn't they? It didn't take long for the next wave to hit. I was sitting in my dorm room, catching up on some reading when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, half expecting it to be a friend or a classmate. But when I saw the name, I froze. It was my mom. My stomach twisted into knots. After everything. After hanging up on her. After telling her that I owed her nothing. Why was she calling again? Was she trying to guilt me into helping them? Was this another one of her manipulative tactics to get me to cave? My mind raced, but before I could overthink it, I answered the call. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my pulse was already racing. There was a pause on the other end, a moment of hesitation before she spoke. Her voice sounded a little softer this time, less authoritative, but still laced with that underlying sense of entitlement. "Hi, it's your mom," she began, as if the past 2 years of silence hadn't happened. I gritted my teeth, trying to keep my composure. "I know who it is," I replied coldly. "What do you want?" She hesitated again. "We need to talk," she said, her voice faltering. "Your dad and we've been going through a rough patch. We're struggling, and we could really use your help." I let out a bitter laugh. "Struggling? You mean because everything you built on Claire's pedestal is falling apart? Because you've put all your eggs in her basket, and now it's broken?" There was silence on the other end, and I could practically hear her shifting uncomfortably. "It's not like that," she replied, her voice defensive. "We've made mistakes, but we're still your parents. And family sticks together, right? We need you." I swallowed hard, the rage building in my chest. "You want me to help you? After everything? After you kicked me out, believing Claire's lies? After you never once reached out to see if I was okay? You think I'm just supposed to drop everything and come to your rescue now?" She stumbled over her words, trying to find the right thing to say, but nothing would make it better. "Please," she said, her voice softer now. "We need you." I closed my eyes, fighting back the anger that threatened to overwhelm me. "You know what? I don't owe you anything. You chose Claire over me. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. I'm not your savior." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end, the frustration in her voice now unmistakable. "We're family. You owe us this." "No," I snapped, my voice rising. You don't get to play the family card anymore. Not after everything you've done. Not after abandoning me when I needed you most. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. There was a long pause. My heart was pounding in my chest, and for a moment, I thought she might say something. Something that would break through the walls I had built. But no, she didn't. Instead, her voice grew sharp. You're being selfish, she said, almost accusingly. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. I shook my head in disbelief. You think I owe you something because you paid for Claire's college and gave her everything she ever wanted? You didn't do anything for me except tear me down. So no, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to fix your mistakes. Not now, not ever. There was another long silence, and then I heard her sigh heavily. I guess this is it then. If that's how you want it. I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, peace. The weight of their expectations had been lifted, and I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their toxic cycle. I had made it this far without them. I was free. The silence after hanging up was deafening. For a long moment, I stood there, staring at my phone in disbelief. My heart was still racing, but there was no turning back now. For so long, I had waited for my parents to acknowledge what they had done, to apologize, to somehow make it right. But now, I realized I couldn't wait for them anymore. I didn't need their validation. I had something far more valuable, my own sense of self-worth. I could hear Aunt Denise's voice in my head, reminding me of all the times she had told me not to let them control my life. But the moment I had hung up on my mother, I felt the truth of those words hit home like never before. It was over. The years of feeling like I wasn't enough, the endless striving for a love that was never truly there. It was all behind me. It had to be. It didn't take long for the weight to settle in. A few hours passed in a blur of emotions, but as the days stretched on, I began to feel the pull of my new reality. I had Aunt Denise, my friends, and my future ahead of me. I didn't need to chase my parents' approval anymore. I was free to live my life without the constant shadow of their expectations hanging over me. But I should have known it was never that easy. A week later, I got a message. This time, it wasn't from my mom or dad, it was from Claire. I should have expected it, really. Claire, the golden child, the one who had always been in control, was never one to back down when things didn't go her way. I saw the message pop up on my phone, and for a moment, I considered ignoring it. But something in me snapped. Maybe it was the fact that I had finally stood up for myself. Maybe it was the way she had treated me all my life, but I couldn't just let her get away with it. The message was short and blunt, just like her. Hope you're doing okay. By the way, don't leave your laptop lying around. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter chuckle escaping my lips. There it was, her smug little way of taunting me, reminding me that she was the one who had orchestrated my downfall. She was the reason I was kicked out of my own home. And now, she thought she could waltz back into my life, like nothing had happened. I stared at the message for a moment, debating whether or not I should respond. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside of me, but I knew better than to engage. I wasn't going to let her have the satisfaction of seeing me react. So, without a second thought, I blocked her number and put my phone down. For a moment, I felt a sense of power, like I was finally in control. She couldn't hurt me anymore, not like she had in the past. But even with the sense of freedom, I knew things weren't over. Claire wasn't the type to just give up, and I wasn't wrong. Less than a week later, the doorbell rang. It was a Saturday afternoon, a rare moment of peace, when I wasn't expecting anything. But as soon as I heard the knock, I knew who it was. There was only one person who would show up unannounced, acting like everything was fine. I peered through the peephole, and there she was, Claire, standing on my doorstep like she was the queen of everything. She smiled as if she hadn't just ruined my life months before. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. I didn't need this, but somehow, I knew she wouldn't leave until she got what she wanted. I opened the door, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Hey," she said, way too cheerfully, like we were old friends. It's been a while. Yeah, it has, I replied flatly, crossing my arms. What are you doing here? Her smile faltered for a second, but she recovered quickly. Can I come in? I think we need to talk. I should have slammed the door in her face. I should have told her to get lost. But curiosity got the best of me. I stepped aside, letting her into my apartment, but I didn't make her feel welcome. No pleasantries, no hospitality. I wasn't in the mood to pretend anymore. She walked in, glancing around as if she owned the place. Nice apartment, she remarked almost casually. I didn't respond. I wasn't here for small talk. Okay, Claire, I said, getting straight to the point. What do you want? She sighed dramatically, as if she was already exhausted by whatever game she was playing. Mom told me about the conversation you had with her, she began, folding her arms. She's pretty upset, you know? I raised an eyebrow. Upset? She kicked me out of the house. What exactly does she have to be upset about? Claire rolled her eyes, clearly trying to dismiss the gravity of everything that had happened. Look, I'm not here to rehash all that. We both know you've always been difficult. My blood started to boil. Difficult? Are you serious right now? You lied about me, manipulated Mom and Dad, and got me kicked out of my own house. That's difficult, Claire. She waved it off with a dismissive gesture. That's ancient history. I came here because I want to make things right. I blinked, disbelief washing over me. Make things right? Are you kidding me? She looked at me with that same fake sweetness she always had, trying to charm her way out of everything. Yeah, I think it's time we put everything behind us. I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. You want to make things right? You ruined my life, Claire. You destroyed my relationship with our parents. And now, you think everything should just go back to normal. She faltered for a moment, frustration evident on her face. I didn't come here to argue, she snapped. I came because I need your help. That was it. The real reason she was here. You want me to help you? I repeated, disbelief turning into anger. After everything you did, you think I'm just going to forget all of that and come to your rescue? She shifted uncomfortably, trying to justify it. Look, I'm not asking for a handout. Things have just been really tough. I thought maybe we could figure something out together. Figure something out together? I echoed, my voice rising. You destroyed everything, and now you want me to fix it. She hesitated, clearly not used to being told no. You're being unreasonable, she muttered. We're family. Family? I repeated. We stopped being family the moment you made it your mission to destroy me. Her face went pale as she finally realized the truth. I wasn't going to play along. Not anymore. Fine, she said coldly, standing up. If that's how you want it, that's how it's going to be. I stood my ground, watching her storm out of my apartment. The door slammed behind her, but the silence that followed was golden. I had finally done it. I had broken free. I had stood up for myself, and for the first time in my life, I felt in control. Looking back, I've learned that sometimes freedom comes at a high cost, but the hardest battles are the ones that lead to your own empowerment. I spent so many years chasing the approval of people who never saw me for who I truly was, and in the end, it was my strength to walk away that allowed me to find my worth. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, love, and understanding. I no longer need the approval of my parents or sister to know that I'm worthy. I've learned to put myself first, and that has made all the difference.